Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Turning Point, a virtual conversation about some pivotal moments for individuals in the ag biological space, sponsored by our friends at Parasim. I'm your host, Rhiannon Branch with Brownfield Ag News, and joining me today is Steve Kahn. Steve, I'll just let you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone.
Well, great, Rhiannon. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Steve Kahn. I am the CEO of NewLeaf Symbiotics, and I'm speaking to you from my cabin in Camden, Maine. So it's great to be here.
I'm kind of jealous. I love the wood cabin feel behind you, so may have to come and visit you sometime.
You're welcome.
Steve, you kind of have a bit of a different background than some of our previous Turning Point speakers. So if you would, go ahead and walk us through what steps led you to be the CEO of NewLeaf Symbiotics.
Yeah, I do have a different background, and I'm happy to share that with you and the folks listening. I came from the finance world. I was actually in venture capital and private equity. I have an engineering degree and an MBA from Harvard. And I went into computer science initially when I got out of business school, and spent most of my career in venture capital and private equity. And a few years ago, when I was still working in that area, I met a guy up in Camden, Maine, who had come across a really interesting technology using microbials for agriculture, and he wanted my help. And he said, "I'm interested in starting a company, but I don't know that I have all the skills to do that." And one thing led to another, and we spent 6 months really getting to know each other, talking a lot about the science. I ended up meeting with the scientist who had really discovered the technology, and eventually decided that probably took about 6 months that I would take the plunge and we'd start a company. And here we are.
Very cool story, Steve. I really appreciate it. And when you look back on all of that, what would you say for you is the most significant turning point for your professional career?
Well, I think, certainly I was in venture capital. So people with ideas were coming to me and saying, "Are you willing to fund this idea?" And we would turn away more than 99% of the opportunities that came our way. But I got to see an awful lot of things in a lot of different industries. So it was great to be on the venture capital side. And I was in my 50s, and here was this opportunity to flip, and for me to be the entrepreneur and to be going out with the tin cup trying to ask for money to the venture capitalists. And I thought, well, I understand that side of the business very well, so I just need to be convinced this is real. And so I went and met the scientists who had discovered the technology down at the University of Maryland, and spent a half a day with them and looked them in the eye and said, "Are these experiments real? Are you convinced this is going to do what you say?" And he said, "Yes." And I believed him. And I also talked to a number of other people. So I had to do my homework, my due diligence, to make sure this was real. And once I was convinced that it was, then we had to decide where to set up the company, and decided we wanted to be in the center of the ag belt. And that was not going to be Camden, Maine. That was going to be St. Louis, Missouri. So we found the Danforth Plant Science Center and spent time meeting with folks there. And when we started there, at that point, we had no people. We had no equipment. We had no office space, and we had no money. All we had at that point was a vision that we could do this, and we wanted to do this. And that's how things get started. And we worked at it, and we raised the money, and we got the space, and we started to hire people, and here we are 8 years later.
So you've talked a lot about, or a little bit about, why you chose biologicals, and specifically why you chose to be headquartered in St. Louis. And we've heard from some of our other speakers, especially with NewLeaf, talking about kind of the ag side of the business. So I'd love to hear, you are the business side. So, and that's a very important part of starting a company. So give us a little bit of insight on more or less what you do in your role, and maybe some of the challenges that came about when starting up a new company.
Yeah. So when I started, I had a partner, and he was the CEO and I was the CFO, because my background was primarily financial. And in getting going, the first, I had three things that I decided were important to me to actually make a go at this. One was, I wanted to do something that I thought was going to help the world. If this was a cigarette company, I wasn't interested. So biologicals, sustainability, climate change, all the right things going on here. So that I could check that box. I wanted to make sure it'd be something that I would have fun doing. This is not, I'm at a point in my career, I don't have to do this. So it had to be something I wanted to do. And I wanted it to be financially successful, not just for me, but for the employees, for our investors, and for our customers. Because if it's financially successful, everybody wins. So those were kind of the three things that I was looking at. And the key there was to try to understand enough of the science to figure out, would this work? And if it worked, would it be something customers would want to buy? And when we started, we were thinking biostimulants. That was the size of our imagination at that point. And I think I was running the company for, it'd been probably a year or so. We were doing trials in Illinois, and one of our contract researchers called me up, and he said, Steve, we planted this corn, and we have an infestation of corn rootworm. I think we're going to have to plow it under, and you're going to lose one of the fields that we were counting on. And I said, well, that's really a shame. We were really hoping we were going to see some biostimulant activity. And then he called me back. It must have been a few days or a week later. And he said, wait a minute, hold the press. So what are you talking about? He said, well, I just walked the field, and one of your strains is performing very differently than everything else. Because when I looked at those plots, and they're scattered around the entire field, every one of those, there didn't seem to be the lodging that we had everywhere else. You've got a strain that can mitigate corn rootworm, and you guys need to pursue this. We weren't even thinking that way. We weren't even planning that. It just came from a real world experience in the field. And that's when we realized that there was more to what we were doing than just a biostimulant, that this could also have a biocontrol effect. It could mitigate against pests and disease. And it started a whole new area of research for us at the company. But it was fortuitous in one of those situations.
Very excited to hear about you guys' work with corn rootworm and helping mitigate that, because it is a very big issue, and even to stumble upon something that could help out the farmers is very exciting. So back on talking about these biologicals, looking back at this story, when would you say was the turning point for you in terms of believing in the technology? I know you said that you did a lot of work to understand the science and really believe in it before you said pass go and collect $200. But what was that point where you're like, yes, I agree?
Yeah, and there were actually a few things that kind of were turning points, and I realize this is called turning points, so that's going to be a buzzword we're going to talk about. But I talked to enough folks, farmers that had actually tried it and actually saw the results. So I think I got convinced pretty early in the game that it would work, that it could work. But there's more to it in building a company than does it work. For example, could we make it? Could we make it at scale at a cost that would be viable for a farmer? That's something that you don't know when you start a company. So I would say within a year or two of starting it, I knew that we had something that could work. But whether we could make it at a cost that we could sell it and the economics would work, took another probably 4 or 5 years before we had proven that we could manufacture through fermentation at scale and get the cost down low enough that we could sell this to a farmer for $4.35 an acre, and they could get a return on their investment of over 400%. So that was not something I could have said 5 years ago, or when we started the company. We didn't know. And that's the risk that the employees are taking, investors are taking, we're all taking, because we're not sure we're going to be able to get to that. But we have, and we're there now, and we're able to make it cheaply enough at scale that we can sell it for $4.35, and the farmer can get a great return, and our investors can also do well. So all of that is exciting, and I think that the manufacturing, being able to crack the code on that was a big deal, and that there was a turning point when that happened.
Steve, I asked this question to some of our other speakers, and some of them are, have been in the ag business their entire life, or maybe started out as farmers. So it's easy for them to look back on all of the technology in agriculture and kind of look forward with this. So I'm interested to hear what, from your perspective, how this looks. Do you feel like biologicals themselves are a turning point in agriculture?
I do. And I think that when you look at what's going on around the world, and you look at climate change and the effect it's having, and the need for us to reduce the amount of chemicals that we're putting in the soil, the writing's on the wall. I mean, we as a population have to figure this out. Now, are biologicals the only answer? Absolutely not. Are they part of the answer? Absolutely. And I think that we're doing a number of things now that go beyond biostimulants and biocontrol in row crops that are tremendously exciting using biologicals. And I'll give you one example, which is rice. Rice is one of the biggest problems for contributing methane into the environment. If you look at, and that's because most rice fields are flooded. And when they're flooded, there's a certain microbe that relishes living underwater in that environment, and their output is methane. So methane is one of the biggest problems. It traps 25 times more heat than carbon dioxide. So it's one of the really bad greenhouse gases that we need to figure out how to do something. And it turns out that in our collection of methylotrophs, we have microbes, about over 100 of them, that actually eat methane as a food source. So we can actually put this into a product with our rice yield, and a farmer can use this, can increase the yield in his farm, and at the same time, we can be reducing the methane going into the atmosphere. And right now, over 70% of all the methane that goes into the atmosphere is actually coming from this one type of microbe called a methanogen. So it's likely that the only way to deal with that is going to be with another microbe. It's not going to be with a sledgehammer. That's not going to work. So we're in a really exciting place right now, and it's the row crops, it's biocontrol, it's specialty. We're doing work in tomatoes, we're doing work in cannabis and lettuce and other leafy greens and other vegetables. And that's because our microbes were found on every single plant. We've never found a plant anywhere on the planet that doesn't have our methotrophs all over it. So our collection of 12,000 strains, we've got a lot of different strains that do a lot of different things. And we're still just, at the tip of the iceberg trying to figure it all out, but it's really exciting. And biologicals are going to be front and center for a long time.
Steve, you touched on a lot of it there, but what else do you see for the future of biologicals, whether that be, in general or specifically for NewLeaf as a company?
Well, let's start with the fact that we're 35 people, so we can't do everything, but we're doing a lot. One area that I haven't touched on that I think is important is nitrogen use efficiency. One of the problems that we have today is we're putting too much nitrogen into the ground, and it has a detrimental effect on the whole climate. So we need to figure out ways to reduce the amount of nitrogen. There are a number of companies that are working on this problem, which is great. The more the better, because the problem is really serious. Most of those companies are doing what's called fixing nitrogen. They're working with a certain kind of microbe that actually can fix nitrogen. We are working on the same problem, but we're doing it a different way. So we are working on what's called nitrogen use efficiency, which is, can we take a native M-troph or PPFM, can we take one of those and put it with on the seed and have it help increase the nitrate uptake of the plant, which basically has the same effect as fixing nitrogen, but it's a different mode of action. And in our early trials that we've done here, we have tested it when we've used the full amount of nitrogen and then 15% less nitrogen and then 30% less nitrogen. And with the 15 and the 30%, we've added our microbes, and we've been able to see the same yield coming out of the crop as with the 100% nitrogen, which would imply, we need to do it on larger trials, et cetera, that a farmer could use 15 or 30% less nitrogen, use a native microbe from our collection, and not lose any yield, and get the same yield that they would have gotten with, and they don't have to spend the money on that additional nitrogen that they're putting in the ground. So there's a lot to be done here, and I don't think we've figured it all out yet, but it's pretty exciting, and there's no question that biologicals are going to play a really big role in the future in agriculture, without a question.
I think a lot of your examples have probably helped with kind of my next question here, but a lot of people, even those who have been in the ag industry for a long time, are at a point right now that you were several years ago when you were first introduced to biologicals, and still kind of sitting on the fence trying to decide if these are the way to go, if this is something they should invest in, something they should believe in. What would you tell someone who kind of hasn't reached their turning point in the biological space yet?
Yeah, I think that one of the problems, let's face it, this is not perfect. One of the problems has been, there's been a lot of snake oil that's been sold over the years, and companies promising that they've got the elixir that's going to solve all their problems, and they've tried it and they maybe didn't get any results. So there's skepticism around biologicals with good reason. I think that's fair. And one of the knocks on biologicals is they don't always perform. we have a win rate, it's pretty good. It's 75 to 80%, depending on corn or soy. But it's not 100%. It's not glyphosate. It's not going to kill the weeds every single time. So in our case, we have to recognize that biologicals are not perfect, but they're worth a try. And in our case, we're encouraging farmers to try Terrasim for corn or for soy. And if they don't get the results that they're hoping for, we have a performance program. We'll replace the product, give them additional product for the following year. So we're trying to be realistic about it. We want to encourage folks to give it a shot. It's going to be the future. There's no question about that, but I do understand a reluctance from farmers, particularly if they've tried something in the past and it didn't work. NewLeaf has been, we're a little different. We're a company of scientists. There's 35 people in the company. About a third of them have PhDs. We've raised over $75 million. So we're not a fly-by-night organization that puts something together and now we're throwing it on the shelf and hoping you'll buy it. There's a lot of deep science that's gone into this. And so they should give it a try.
We probably have a lot of listeners. Some of our farmers may even be out in combine right now. It's smack dab in the middle of harvest season for a lot of folks here in the grain belt, at least. I know, Steve, you don't get to spend a lot of time maybe out in the field or talking to farmers, but that doesn't mean that harvest isn't a part of your job as well. What is the most exciting thing about harvest season for you in your position?
Well, harvest is important. We are, given what NewLeaf does as a company, we have going on at any one time, maybe, I'm guessing now, 50 trials, maybe more, all over the country, actually all over the world, on all kinds of things, whether it's the nitrogen trial or a tomato trial in Spain, corn and soy, rice trials. We have trials going on all over the world, and that data is going to start coming in sometime in the next 2 weeks, and then it's going to come in straight till early December, mid-December. So harvest for me is really important. It's different importance than it might be for a farmer, but it's going to direct a lot of the activity of the company for the next year or two, because it's the results of these trials, excuse me, it's the result of these trials that really determine the direction of the company. So we're really excited about them. And every year, this is a big time for us.
Definitely. Well, Steve, I appreciate hearing your story and your take on biologicals, especially helping, found NewLeaf Symbiotics and continuing to work on that platform. Is there anything else that, you'd like to add to the conversation that we haven't been able to touch on?
Well, look, I think that having a company like NewLeaf, it's a journey. When you start a company like this, you don't know where it's going to go, how it's going to turn out. Company takes twists and turns that we never expected, but it's been an exciting ride so far, and I think that there's a lot more to come. And I think that when I look at the power of biologicals and what they can do, I realize that there's so much more that we have yet to discover that's going to become important, not just in farming, but in medicine, in everything that goes on in our lives. And so it's exciting to be part of that and to feel like we're doing our part to try to advance the cause for our company, but also for the world.
All right. Well, that wraps up this episode of Turning Point. For those interested in learning more about TerraSim or NewLeaf, they have a website, www.terrasim2022.com, where you can learn more about their products and some of the things Steve was talking about. This video will be available on demand to view anytime at brownfieldagnews.com, so feel free to check that out. And you can tune in next Thursday at noon for the next episode of Turning Point. Hope to see you all then.